All right, welcome back. We're going to do kind of a summary of what we just talked about in chapter 1 and go over a few items here, just so that we have some clarity. So think about the things that you actually learned or were learning about in chapter 1 all through those sessions. Let's just go over them. The first thing that we learned about is this too shall pass. So everything's temporary. So don't get all worked up when things are not going perfectly all the time, because obviously that's just not reality. And so this too shall pass. That's the first thing that you want to remember. The second thing you want to remember is the zone of learning, because remember, I said it's really important to reframe your thinking about difficulties. I don't know if you know people, but I know people that when bad times come, it's like the end of the world. It doesn't make any difference how big or how small. To them, it's this major drama. Everything's bigger than life. Everything's difficult. The sky is falling. It's actually a very hard thing to witness when you see people responding that way. And if that person is you, this is really going to be a really good application of the zone of learning. And so that you can apply this to yourself and say, look, I'm not going to do the Chicken Little sky is falling routine anymore. I'm going to realize that that tension and that conflict I'm feeling is just my cue to say, I'm about to get smarter. So I need to back off emotionally and take a breath and let's see what I can learn from this that will promote my purpose, that will make me smarter and enhance my quality of life. And so these are really important things to think about. And I realize that they're pretty foundational. And you might have already been told by people to, hey, you need to calm down. You need to not be so emotional. And maybe you're really struggling with that. And that's a real issue. And so what I'm saying is take heart. We're going to actually give you some really good, positive, practical, simple tools that I've used myself, because I was at that point at one time in my life. And so it's important for you to be able to apply some of these things you're going to learn later. So don't lose heart. We're just doing foundational things right now, okay? So the next thing that we talked about was purpose, truth, and change, and their counterfeits. And so it's important to recognize that purpose looks very different from selfish ambition. Selfish ambition says it's all about me, and I don't care who I have to step on in order to accomplish my goals. Purpose says, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't need collateral damage in order to make my purpose happen. I am going to enhance myself and invest myself. I'm going to improve who I am so that there's a lot for me, but there's a lot for you as well. And we also learned that purpose actually solves a social problem. And so that's really going to be important later on as we move through the course. And of course, change, change happens. Change is inevitable, but growth is optional. And so we believe that when you add purpose, the real clear view of what your purpose is, and it's okay if you don't know what it is right now, because we believe you're going to gain some clarity throughout this course. But when you have purpose and you add to it truth, not facts, but truth, then it's a game changer. And change naturally happens, and change brings growth in this case, okay? We talked about healthy relationships and education, and those are the things that you need in order to sustain and really understand what your purpose is. Many people think that they have healthy relationships because they have categories of what this relationship is doing for them. And you might find later on in the next few chapters that the relationships in your life might need a little bit of rearranging in order for you to really become the authentic self. And that's really what we want for you. We want you to become the best person that you were supposed to be before life happened, okay? We talked about the 1/8 inch principle, and the 1/8 inch principle talks about how we make small decisions and it changes everything. And so you had an opportunity to go through this on your sheet and realize, wow, I did make some decisions throughout my lifetime that were small decisions, but it ended up costing me a lot in terms of consequences. And so we want you to be able to really work through this and realize that, hey, the laws of nature are pretty consistent, and they can seem harsh in terms of consequences, but they also work in our favor. So just like you made some decisions, that took you away from your trajectory, you can also make decisions that'll realign you back with your trajectory, okay? We talked about, are you ready for change? And some people will say, well, I guess, you know, I'm not really ready for change. I think what I'd really like to do is have everybody around me change so that I would feel better with my life. And I don't know if you've met people like that, but I have, where they said, you know, my life would be great if everybody else would just do what they're supposed to do. Well, that's a real indicator that that person has to rethink if they're really interested in pursuing purpose, because we're going to learn about that later also. And I know I keep saying that, but I'm telling you, there's a lot of really good stuff that's coming up. We're just laying the foundation. We talked about control, influence, and choice, and how they're different and why they're useful or why they're not quite as useful. Control is really a not a very helpful tool, to be honest, and it limits our learning and stymies our growth, and so it's just not a good thing. Even with our children, we should not be controlling our children. We should be training our children. There's a big difference. Influence is massive, and so we have to really decide who we want to influence in our life, and that we get to have the opportunity to influence others, but it doesn't mean forcing anything down their throat, okay? So let's just be clear about that. We want to give people the choice for that. And so we learned a lot of stuff, okay? A lot of great things. Where am I? I mean, you know, am I putting a lot of pressure on other people to correct my life and make my life better when it's the responsibility of my own to take control over my own life? And so what is the big idea? What was the overarching principle, do you think? I've heard people say, oh, you know, it's just, you know, changing, and all that's correct. But really, just to sum it up, what I want to really say about what we wanted to learn in this chapter is that it's really about reframing our beliefs about things we already thought we knew, and maybe taking a look at them a little bit differently. And so bottom line, I opened up the chapter with it, didn't I? I said, what's the most important thing? What I learned. And so keep these basic principles in the forefront of your mind as we now move into the next chapter, which is probably one of the most powerful chapters. Of course, I'm going to say this about every chapter, but I really do believe it is one of the most powerful chapters in terms of how we live our life. And because we are going to tackle something called the two models, and this is going to be really, really key for you now and in the future, okay? And so happy learning. Remember, the most important thing is what I learned, and you're going to learn a lot of new stuff coming up. And so let's enjoy the ride. Okay?